If the functional use of a time lapse is to give a stylistic overview of a location or situation without getting lost in the details or wasting time, then slow motion must have the opposite effect. It invites us to marvel in the details, get lost in them. For a few years now, games have utilised slow motion to interesting results, but I don't feel like we've quite reached the full potential of it yet. But before getting into all of that, let's first look at what slow motion has added to games over the years. Well, firstly, like in movies, games can use slow motion for a simple, stylish effect, almost as if the game is turning to us every so often and saying, "Hey, check this out. Oh yeah, look at this." It's often used for that elusive cool effect, but not limited to simply being cool, as it can also be used to dramatically signal something of importance to the player, or even just heighten the drama. Although looking stylish may just be a side effect of another common use of slow motion, as a pacing tool. It's not uncommon in games to fight entire rooms of enemies. You're not always sure how many people you've still to take out. You're too busy trying to fight and survive to know precisely. Some games will outright tell you this sort of information, either through the user interface or through dialogue.
All clear.
Although others will use slow motion. We've all come to recognise a slow motion death as the end of a battle. Though perhaps the first thing you think of when hearing about slow motion in games is its use as a gameplay mechanic, popularised by Max Payne back in 2001.
It always seems like time slows down in the middle of the action. You know, you can see the bullets flying through the air, the hero dodging in slow motion. Bullet time, that's what they call it. Bullet time.
With the press of a button, you're given an edge over your enemies and often the ability to look cool whilst doing it. Some games will make it a limited resource. Others make it more of an event that you have to trigger, perhaps by dodging at the right time. No matter how it is utilised, no matter how fast you or the enemies are in this state, the overall intention of slow motion as a gameplay mechanic is pretty much universal. For a few sweet seconds, you have more power. The ability to perceive the world faster than your enemies often goes hand in hand with power. Even if slow motion isn't being used as a gameplay mechanic, it often will be used to improve a game's feel, to make hits register more, to make showings of strength feel that much more powerful. My point is that slow motion equals strength or power. Yet despite all this, I don't feel like the full potential of power in slow motion has been quite utilised yet. Many of the games I've been talking about are firm favourites of mine, but they only really scratch the surface of possibilities. When you think about it, when using bullet time, not that much is really changing, is it? You're still playing the same game, but things are just made a touch easier. You have that extra second to line up that perfect shot. So while the 4 things we've discussed so far are great, I'd like to add a 5th, if I may. The power fantasy. Not too dissimilar to the gameplay method, I'll grant you, but such a step beyond that I feel that it deserves its own number. Because by power, I mean superpower, I mean ridiculous stuff, I mean Quicksilver from the X-Men movies sort of stuff, where you are truly seeing the world differently from everyone. Maybe this would make the player feel too powerful, or maybe it's still a limited resource that you have to draw upon, I don't know. All I know is that games have yet to make me feel this powerful yet. Some have made a decent effort. The Sands of Time had a special ability that dabbled in it in a sort of Dragon Ball Z sort of way, as did One Finger Death Punch and Quantum Break, though in a much more controlled and scripted manner. And using Force Speed in the Jedi Knight series is quite fun, but for me there's only one game that has come close.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
For those unfamiliar with this game, Superhot is a shooter where time only moves when you do. You're not quite a superhero, but your abilities do allow you to feel like quite the badass and see the world differently. Superhot is perhaps the closest game to fulfilling this fantasy of mine, simply because the designers understand that the power and satisfaction from playing this game doesn't come from firing bullets.
We discovered that shooting is the least interesting thing. Like, what really gets excited is like this grabbing a weapon mid-air, throwing it at an enemy. Like, when you do it, you imagine things. You imagine this like ninja-like, John Woo-like jump over the pool table, grabbing the gun mid-air. It always feels like you're seeing what the character is doing, right? Even though it's like from the game perspective, this is just a jumping capsule with collision detection and almost no camera bobbing even. Shooting is just one of the options, and it's like it has the least style. Of course, everybody can shoot in this game, right?
Exactly. Guns in games are fine, but we've all fired a million guns in a million games by this point. But Superhot managed to make it more empowering and fun without bigger and badder weapons, but by allowing you to see the world differently. The use of slow motion as a gameplay mechanic sort of just came and went, like a fad. It didn't totally disappear, but we haven't advanced that far with it since its first inception. In action games, it's typically a little more than a crutch. Which isn't to dismiss games for using it as such, I just feel like there's so much more to be done with it. As fun as Superhot is, I just hope it's the tip of the iceberg.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
If I could save time in a bottle,